I saw it on the porch first thing, lying flat on the wet cedar boards where the wind usually scattered the mail. A white envelope with the USPS Eagle in the corner. Official change of address confirmation. The flap was soaked by rain. I stood there with my coffee, bitter and black, just staring. The paper seemed alive, telling me something I hadn't agreed to. Inside it was plain. Your mail is being forwarded to P.O. Box 3187, Fremont, Washington. I read it twice. Every detail was correct: my name, my address, except the destination. Fremont was 15 minutes away, but it wasn't mine. The smell of wet fur drifted from the yard. Kids shouted down the block, running to school. Their voices were sharp, bright. Mine stayed silent. I turned the page, searching for a note, maybe from Parker, maybe from Natalie. Nothing. Just the seal, the barcode, the official typeface. On paper, I no longer lived here. I thought of Julia. She kept every record neatly. Straight strokes, black ink. Her recipes were still on the fridge in her careful handwriting. If she had seen this, she would have written a note, dated it, filed it. For the record, she always said. I dumped the coffee into the sink. The smell of scorched grounds rose. I needed a clear head. The postmark said yesterday. That meant it was already in effect. Any letter bill, notice, postcard from Ellie, would now vanish into a box in Fremont. I checked the rest of the mail. Only a soggy catalog. No letter from Rachel. No notice from the bank. The silence of what was missing felt heavier than what I held. At the kitchen table, I opened my notebook. Drew 3 columns the way Julia used to. What they know. What they don't know. What I want them to think. In the first I wrote, someone filed a COA. P.O. Box 3187. In the second, blank. In the third, I accept what comes in the mail. Writing it steadied me. Outside, rain streaked the window. The radiator ticked its old rhythm. By evening, I decided to test it. I addressed an envelope to myself, slipped in a blank card, walked it to the blue mailbox by the corner store. I watched the lid slam shut, echoing. 2 days later it came back, a yellow sticker plastered across it. Moved unable to forward. My name crossed out in thick black marker, like I had been erased. Officially. The catalog lay on the counter beside it, smiling faces, things I'd never buy, the world going on. Mine redirected. I turned the envelope again. The words didn't sound like a mistake. They sounded like a verdict. 2 mornings later, a knock. Sharp, deliberate. Not a neighbor. Not Parker's old pounding. I left the chain on. A man stood there in a navy windbreaker, folder under his arm. No card. Just a practiced smile, like I'd been waiting. Mr. Hale, the sale. Buyers pre-approved. Easy transition. Behind him, the recycling truck groaned, glass rattling. My house smelled of coffee and lemon polish. His words cut through both. Sale of what? Your home. Corner lot. Strong market. They want to move fast. He slid a sheet through the gap. Numbers marched down the page. Price, proceeds, commission. No logo, no letterhead. Just money. In the corner, faint pencil. 2 letters. DAR. Almost rubbed out. I looked up. He didn't blink. Didn't explain. I didn't request this. Another smile. Someone did. A family representative. Very standard. Family. The word stuck. I let the sheet hang until the wind bent the corner. He withdrew it, tucked it back. Think it over. Things move fast. Then he was gone. Folding into a silver sedan I'd never seen. I leaned against the door. The polish smell turned false, like a hotel room staged for strangers. Notebook, steadying me. Realtor, no card. Net sheet, no letterhead. DR, in pencil, said family representative. But his voice clung. That evening, another envelope. Smaller, handwritten. My name slanted wrong. Inside, a flyer for assisted living. Yellow sticky note pinned. Tour scheduled, be practical. The handwriting was strange, but the phrase wasn't Daniel's phrase. My son-in-law. Smoothing over holidays. Always. Let's be practical. The flyer had no stamp, no postmark. Not mailed. Slipped straight into the box. Radiator clicked, ink still damp. I folded the note into Julia's binder. Outside, children's voices carried from the park, their game certain of its rules. Mine had changed. For the first time, the shiver came. Not from the cold. I wasn't looking for it, but I found it. The green binder Julia had hidden in the back of the kitchen drawer, under the towels no one was allowed to touch. It smelled faintly of lemon oil, the way she kept everything. On the first page, her handwriting stood out strong, blocky. For the record, do not sign under pressure. She had underlined it twice. Inside were old bank slips, investment papers, even a faded permit for a boat slip in Port Townsend. Every page punched neatly, sleeves in order. Julia had saved everything. But one page didn't match. Whiter paper. Blue ink instead of her usual black. A typed amendment, mail, to address updated for property tax. No county stamp, no signature line. Just a faint indentation at the bottom corner. Someone had pressed a ballpoint hard. I held it against the light. Letters showed through, shallow but sharp. RK. Or maybe DK. Not Julia's hand. The radiator ticked behind me. The house felt like it was holding its breath. The phone rang. Unknown number. Mr. Hale? The voice was clipped. This is about Parker Reed's account. Payment is overdue. We've been told property assets may be liquidated. Is that correct? My chest tightened. No, I said quickly. But the voice continued. We have notes that you, or your representative, are considering a sale. That word again. Representative. I hung up. The silence afterward pressed harder than the call. At the window, I saw Mrs. Alvarez clipping roses across the street. Ordinary. Steady. But my world had tilted. I wrote it all down. Julia's binder versus the new page. Indentation. RK or DK. Call about Parker's debts. Mention of sale. The pencil tip broke. My hand was shaking. I sharpened it again. I thought of Parker Emily's husband. Always pacing, restless after his startup failed. Phone calls in the garage. Julia once showed him the binder, back when she trusted he'd mature. He had access. He had reasons. He had debts. His laugh echoed in my head, quick, careless. A cover. It could be him. The realtor, the net sheet, the flyer all pointing to Parker cashing out what was mine. But my eyes went back to the grooves on that page. The initials. Not Parker's. He never used initials. He signed his whole name, bold, messy. Someone else had leaned over Julia's careful archive, left their mark without a name. And Julia's words stared back at me. Do not sign under pressure. I locked the binder away. But Parker's laugh followed me into the dark. The binder stayed in the drawer, but it stayed in my head too. Blue ink, those strange initials. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them. I tried to argue with myself. Maybe it was mine. Maybe I'd written it years ago and forgot. Since Julia passed, I'm not the same. Some days slip. I leave the kettle on. Misplace bills. Lose the date. Maybe I was turning shadows into facts. By evening, I stepped outside. The rain had stopped. The air was heavy with wet soil and rotting leaves. Across the street, Mrs. Alvarez was cutting back her roses. She waved with her shears. Robert, you had a visitor last night, she said. A car, parked out front, gray sedan. Saturday there a long time. Do you know them? She said it lightly, like asking about the weather. I froze. What time? Close to midnight. I went for water, looked out. It was just sitting there. Lights off. Then gone. A gray sedan. Same as the realtor's. I thanked her, forced a smile, went back inside. My hands were already damp before I touched the doorknob. The house smelled faintly of polish, but sharper underneath that dusty burn from the heater. The kind of smell you only notice when you're on edge. I sat at the table, opened the binder again. Julia's first page steadied me. For the record, do not sign under pressure. But my eyes fell to the blue sheet. I tilted it under the lamp. The grooves looked like RK, or maybe DK. It shifted with the light. Could it have been Julia? Maybe she started to update it before she died. Maybe I'd forgotten. But Julia never used blue ink. Never. Even her shopping lists were black. The radiator ticked. My thoughts ticked with it. Back and forth. Yes. No. I wrote in my notebook, gray sedan, midnight. Mrs. Alvarez saw it. Same as realtors? Blue ink. Could it be Julia? The page looked steadier than I felt. I poured tea, lifted the cup, but I'd forgotten the bag. Just hot water. It tasted like nothing. And for the first time, I wondered, was I building a case on paper too thin to hold? The mailbox groaned when I opened it, metal scraping like it resented the task. Bills, catalogs, and then one envelope heavier than the rest. Thick, off-white, the kind banks or lawyers use. My name was in the corner, printed clean. But the addressee wasn't me. Natalie Hale. Same last name, but not my street. Not her condo across town. My box. My house. I stood in the driveway with the wind tugging at the paper. The envelope smelled faintly of wet asphalt, as if it had fallen before being shoved in. Inside, the radiator hissed when I tore it open. Kingston Medical Associates. Routine labs. 2 weeks ago. Balance. 0. Insurance covered it. But the mailing address was mine. Why here? The postmark was blurred, faint, like it had been run through the machine twice. I set it beside Julia's binder. They didn't belong together, yet they did. Maybe it was the post office. Maybe I'd mixed it in by mistake. My memory slips. I know that. Still, I wrote it down. Natalie's envelope, my address, medical labs, blurred postmark. I underlined the last line. Silence filled the house as the radiator clicked off. Outside, I heard the steady bounce of a basketball from the park. Normal. Ordinary. Inside, nothing was ordinary. My eyes returned to the binder. Julia's firm handwriting in black. Then, again, the blue page. The indentation. Maybe DK. Daniel. Natalie's husband. The initials stared back, half erased but not gone. I closed the binder too hard, the clap echoing in the empty kitchen. And for the first time, I wondered if it wasn't strangers moving the ground beneath me, but my own daughter. The Ballard post office smelled of cardboard and toner. A line of people shuffled forward, packages in arms, phones glowing, a baby fussing. Ordinary life. When it was my turn, I slid the slip across the counter. Green stamp. Box 3187. The clerk, a woman with tired eyes and a heavy key lanyard, looked up. "You're Mr. Hale?" "Yes." She pulled a thin folder, flipped it open. Inside was the form. A signature scrawled across the line where mine should have been. Blue ink. Not mine. Not even close. The R was too stiff, like someone added the leg after. The H was squeezed, narrow. R. Hale. Written just enough to fool a glance. My mouth dried. The page smelled faintly of sanitizer. "This isn't my writing." She frowned. "It's what we have on file. Says you came in last week, verified the box." "I didn't. I've never had a PO box here." She turned the log so I could see. Neat black rows. Initials scribbled beside them. Her finger tapped. Hale. Verified in person, the 27th of October. The 27th of October. The same day I'd written Julia's binder in my notebook. I hadn't left the house. Still, staring at the crisp black log, doubt scraped in. Could I have slipped? Forgotten? I forced myself to write it down anyway. P.O. Box 3187, verified the 27th of October. Blue ink signature, not mine. Clerk insists I came in. My hand stayed steady. My stomach didn't. Behind me, the teenager laughed at his phone. A mother cooed at her baby. Their world was simple. Mine tilted on a single form. "Can I see inside the box?" She shook her head. "Box is closed. Family rep set forwarding. You should already be getting mail at home." Family rep, the same phrase the realtor used. I walked out with the paper, the fluorescent lights still in my eyes. Outside, a mail truck idled, diesel heavy in the wind. I stood on the curb gripping the slip, the blue signature glaring back. Someone had walked in here with my name, my address, my life, and they had signed me away. The bottom drawer was cracked open when I walked into the study. I hadn't left it like that. Last night I'd pushed it shut until the wood groaned. Now it sat half an inch wide, just enough to show the edge of the folders. The room still carried the faint scent of lemon oil, but layered under it was something unfamiliar. A trace of laundry softener, sweet, powdery, clinging in the air. I knelt and pulled the drawer the rest of the way. The folders were inside, but too neat. Tabs lined up, pages flush, like someone had handled them carefully. Julia used to tease me for leaving papers crooked, half-slid. The brass latch had a fresh scratch, bright against the tarnish, like something sharp had forced it. I wrote it down. Drawer open. Folders rearranged. Scratch on latch. My palms left faint sweat marks on the paper. Parker came to mind first, Emily's husband, always careless, slamming drawers shut. But this wasn't his style. This was deliberate. Surgical. I opened the binder. Julia's note was still there on the first page. Do not sign under pressure. The blue ink sheet was tucked inside. But now, there was something else. A sticky note, pale yellow. 2 words only. Check balances. I hadn't seen it before, and I had looked. My chest tightened. Parker? Daniel? Slipping in after church? Or Julia's quiet warning I had missed? The radiator ticked hollow in the corner, like a clock skipping beats. I pressed the sticky flat and shut the binder. Outside, teenagers laughed too loud, sneakers slapping wet pavement. Their world was noise and speed. Mine was silence and grooves in paper. I closed the drawer again, wood groaning. But it no longer sounded like wood. It sounded like someone else had already been here and might return. The sticky note sat in my pocket all night. By morning it was soft. The edges curled from my thumb, pressing it over and over. Check balances. I hadn't wanted to. I knew what I'd find, numbers that didn't feel like mine anymore. But when the kettle clicked off and the house went quiet, I dialed the bank. A woman's voice, calm, clipped. Security verification, please. I gave my date of birth, the last digits of my account. My throat felt dry as dust. Then her pause stretched too long. Mr. Hale, we already confirmed your request last week. I gripped the phone harder. What request? Your visit. You came in with identification. We updated your mailing address and allowed an outside person to ask about your accounts. My chest tightened. No, I didn't. Her tone didn't change. We have your signature on file. I closed my eyes. The radiator ticked once in the corner, hollow as a typewriter key. Could you describe it? Papers rustled. Block letters. Your full name. Neat. Deliberate. Not my hand. Mine drifts, loops, slants downhill. The silence between us was too clean. I almost said it out loud. That's Daniel's hand, not mine. But the words stuck. Instead, I wrote on my pad. Bank says I visited. Address change confirmed. Signature on file. Block letters. My pencil snapped. The line broke, leaving a black dot pressed deep into the page. Outside, a delivery truck rattled past, bass thumping from its cab. Someone else's world still moving forward. I stayed frozen with the phone against my ear. Mr. Hale, would you like us to send confirmation to your new address? The words hit like a nail in my chest. No, I said. My own voice sounded unfamiliar. Send nothing. I hung up before she could finish. On the counter, the sticky note lay limp, the blue ink fading into yellow paper. Check balances. Who had written it? Daniel, leaving himself a reminder? Parker, trying to spook me? Or Julia, some quiet warning I was too slow to hear? For the first time, I doubted myself. Had I walked into that bank and signed something? Could grief or age make me forget a whole visit? I tore the note in half, but the words didn't leave. They pressed in harder, like grooves on paper you can't erase. Emily arrived without calling. The doorbell rang once, short, and when I opened it, she was already stepping inside, carrying a paper bag that smelled of oranges and bakery sugar. "You look pale," she said, not even hello. "I brought scones. You should eat." The living room filled with her perfume, something floral and sharp that reminded me of Julia's old dresser drawers. I set the bag on the counter. My hands shook when I reached for the kettle. The water inside was cold. I hadn't boiled it yet. Emily sat, crossed her legs, and smoothed her skirt the way she always did when she was buying time. "You've been busy with the bank, I hear." My chest tightened. "Who told you that?" She smiled, soft, too soft. "Dad, you always leave papers around. Natalie worries." I hadn't left anything out. My notes were locked in the drawer, the same one that had been tampered with. The kettle began to hum, rising slow, like something climbing a ladder. Emily leaned closer. "Don't sign anything without me, okay? I can help. Parker and I know people who can sort out debts." Debts. She used the word before I did. I poured water over the tea bag. The steam fogged my glasses. "Emily," I said, "what debts?" She glanced at the floor, then back at me, her lashes blinking too quick. "Nothing serious. Just things Parker handled." "Don't worry." The hum of the kettle switched off with a click. The silence after it felt heavy, pressing. I wrote it later. Emily appeared unannounced. Mentioned bank without being told. Knows word, debts. Advised not to sign. Across the street, Mrs. Alvarez clipped roses again, her shears snapping rhythmically, like a clock counting down. Emily reached into the bag, pulled out a scone, broke it in half, and placed one piece on my plate. "Eat. You need strength." Her tone was gentle, but her eyes flicked to the binder drawer before she smiled again. I chewed the scone. It tasted dry, heavy, sticking to the roof of my mouth. When she left, the bag still smelled of oranges, but the house felt smaller, as if she had measured the walls on her way out. I went to the drawer. Locked. The binder inside. But the sticky note check balances was gone. The latch groaned the same way it always did, stiff, like bone on bone. The binder was there, untouched, but the sticky note was gone. I pulled my notebook from the shelf. The one I never left open, the one Julia had given me 3 Christmases ago, with a blue leather cover. I flipped back through the last week's pages. Some were intact, my scrawled lists, crooked dates, underlined words. But then, between part 6 and part 7, a page was missing. Torn out clean, no fringe of paper left. I ran my thumb over the edge. Smooth, deliberate. I sat at the desk and stared. The radiator ticked once. Outside, a dog barked, then stopped, as if someone had pulled a plug on the sound. I wrote it down in darker, slower strokes. Sticky note gone. 1 notebook page missing. Tear is too neat. My pencil broke again. I reached into the trash can under the desk, just in case. Only dust and a gum wrapper. No page. Someone had taken it. Or I had. The thought made my throat tighten. Could I have ripped out my own notes and forgotten? Could I have written something I didn't want to see again? The phone buzzed on the counter, sudden, sharp, unknown number. I let it ring, but it left a voicemail. When I played it back, the voice was muffled, rushed, male. "Mr. Hale, we'll need confirmation before we move forward. If you want to avoid default, call back before Friday. Default." The word clanged. It wasn't Parker's collector. It wasn't the bank's calm clerk. This was different, too vague, too practiced. I looked at the clock. 7:14 p.m. The house shadows had stretched long across the walls. Across the street, Mrs. Alvarez was gone. Her roses stood clipped short, stems raw in the dim light. I shut the notebook and slid it under my pillow that night. But sleep didn't come. Each sound, the pipe settling, the fridge humming, pressed in sharp, like someone shifting in the next room. It was close to midnight when I heard it again. A low hum outside, steady but nervous, like someone breathing through an engine. I pulled the curtain. The gray sedan sat under the street lamp, paint dull in yellow light, windows blacked out. Not the first time. I'd seen it on 4th Street 2 weeks ago. Again near the post office when I went to ask about the change of address. But tonight, it was in front of my house. The radiator ticked behind me. I slipped on my coat, though I hadn't planned to leave. My hand lingered too long on the doorknob. When I stepped out, the cold hit sharp against my teeth. The neighborhood was silent, except for that steady pulse of the engine. I moved down the driveway. Each step on gravel cracked louder than I wanted. The sedan's headlights blinked once, a quick test. I froze. The passenger window slid halfway down. I braced for a face. A voice something. But nothing. Just exhaust. Sour in the air. I edged closer. Inside, a dashboard glow. Papers stacked on the seat, a half-empty bottle of water. And on the dash, tucked in the corner, a realtor's flyer. My house. In color. Across it, stamped in red. Pending. The car door clicked. I stepped back. No one got out. The window rose again, slow. The sedan rolled forward. Quiet. Careful. At the corner, it vanished. No brake lights. I stood there long after it was gone. The flyer's image burned behind my eyes. Back inside, I wrote it down. Gray sedan outside. Flyer. Pending. No one spoke. No plates. I should have stepped closer. Taken the plates. But I didn't. Upstairs, the house felt too still. The radiator ticking, the air tight. Sleep didn't come. Daniel's offhand words circled back. These deals move faster than you think. Emily's eyes, darting toward the drawer. Parker's restless pacing in the garage. Any of them could have been behind the wheel. But none of them had shown a face. And yet, I knew. The night wasn't finished with me. And yet I knew. The night wasn't finished with me. Morning would only bring proof of it. Morning proved me right. In the mailbox, under a pile of grocery ads and a credit card offer, was the same flyer I'd seen on the dashboard of the gray sedan. I checked the mailbox the next morning. The metal door was stiff, always sticking in damp weather. Inside, under a pile of grocery ads and a credit card offer I never asked for, was the same flyer I'd seen on the dashboard of the gray sedan. My house. Photo taken in better light than I'd seen it in years. Porch washed in gold, lawn cropped neat, as if time itself had been trimmed. Across the bottom, in red, pending. But this copy was different. Someone had written a phone number in thick blue ink across the margin. No name, no agency, just digits pressed hard enough to bleed through the page. I turned it over. The back smelled faintly of ink, still sharp, as though the writing was fresh. The number wasn't familiar. I dialed it anyway, my hand shaking against the receiver. 3 rings, then a click, silence. I spoke first. Who is this? The line crackled. Breathing, slow, deliberate. Then the call ended. Maybe it wasn't breathing at all. Maybe it was just static and my head filled the rest. I set the flyer on the table and stared at the blue scrawl. Emily's handwriting was neat, always upright. Natalie's leaned left, like a whisper. This one was jagged, blocky. The way Daniel signed birthday cards. But Parker, too, I remembered the marker on his startup whiteboards. Thick lines cutting across words, always too heavy. I circled the number in my notebook. Then I noticed something else. The envelope that had come with the credit card offer was slit across the side, not the top. As if someone had opened it in a hurry. My address label was smeared, like damp fingers had dragged across it. I looked out the window. Mrs. Alvarez was back in her yard, hanging laundry in the gray light. Sheets lifted in the breeze, clean and simple. I wrote it down. Flyer and mailbox, phone number added. Call equals silence, breathing. Envelope slid open, label smudged. The radiator hissed behind me. I couldn't shake the thought. Someone wasn't just watching me from the street anymore. They were reaching inside my house, one page, one envelope at a time. And yet I knew. The night wasn't finished with me. Morning would only bring proof of it. The envelope was cream-colored, heavier than the usual bills. County seal in the corner. I slid it open with the same knife I used for apples. Inside, notice of authorization. My name typed clean across the top. And at the bottom, my own signature. Except it wasn't. The slant was wrong. The H in Hale curved backward, stiff, like it had been copied too carefully. My hand always shook slightly, a tremor Julia used to tease me about. This one was steady, machine-sure. The radiator hissed behind me. My fingers left sweat marks on the page. I compared it against an old check from the drawer. The difference was obvious to me. To anyone else? Maybe not. I looked closer. The pen stroke had bled just enough to leave small halos of blue. A ballpoint pressed too hard. The kind Parker always carried, clicking it through meetings like a nervous tick. But Daniel, too, he signed bold, leaning into the paper, never with a fountain pen. Emily's hand was neater, more precise. Natalie had Julia's loops. I laid them all side by side. My kitchen table turned into a courtroom only I could see. The notice authorized temporary representation in matters of property conveyance. No name filled in the representative line, just my signature beneath a blank. It was the same word again. Representative. Like the debt collector on the phone. I set the paper down, hard enough to rattle the glass on the counter. Outside, kids were riding bikes past Mrs. Alvarez's roses, their laughter too bright for the flat gray sky. The sound felt foreign, a language I no longer spoke. I wrote it down. Official letter, forged signature. Same word, representative. Pen pressure heavy, possible Parker or Daniel. Then I stopped. Because the check I'd compared against the one I knew was mine showed the same smudged halo of blue. I stared at it, throat tightening. Had my hand been that steady once? Had my tremor eased? Or was my memory tilting, tricking me into doubt? The radiator ticked again, like a clock running out of time. I kept the binder and the forged letter locked in the desk drawer. Same drawer where I'd been storing my notebook, every observation, every list. That morning, the drawer was open. Not wide, just a finger's width. Enough to make me stop in the doorway. The radiator hissed behind me. The air smelled faintly of dust, though I'd closed it tight the night before. I pulled it open. The notebook was gone. For a moment I stood gripping the edge of the desk so hard the wood pressed grooves into my palms. Then I checked again, as if I might have misplaced it. Shifted the envelopes. Lifted the old calculator. Nothing. I knew I hadn't left it out. I wrote in it after the phone call with the silent breathing, sharpened the pencil, and slid it back inside. I remembered the scrape of the cover against the drawer's bottom. Now it was missing. In its place, pushed to the back, lay a folded page I didn't recognize. White. Cleaner than my notebook's ruled sheets. One sentence typed across the center. Records may be subpoenaed. No signature. The radiator ticked again. I looked toward the window. Across the street, the gray sedan was back. Engine off this time, just sitting in the drizzle. The flyer I'd kept on the table was gone too. I hadn't touched it. The table was bare except for the forged letter and Julia's binder. I wrote it down on the back of an old envelope, since I had nothing else. Drawer open, notebook missing. Inserted page, records may be subpoenaed. Flyer vanished. I tried to steady my hand, but the pencil snapped under the pressure. For a long minute I just sat in the chair, staring at the empty desk, listening to the radiator hiss like it was counting something down. Maybe Daniel had come by while I slept. He had a key. Or Parker restless enough to slip in, hunting through drawers like he hunted through his own garage. Emily too, she always went straight to the desk when she visited, leaving notes for me back when Julia was alive. All of them had touched this drawer before. But none of them had left that single type sentence. I closed the drawer, but the emptiness inside followed me. I kept a shoebox of old letters in the hall closet. Julia's habit, she never threw away mail, not even utility bills. When the notebook disappeared, I went to check the box. The envelopes were stacked neatly, rubber bands brittle with age, gas bills from the 92nd, birthday cards from my brother. Julia's grocery lists scribbled on the backs of bank statements. I opened one at random, a letter from the county assessor, 5 years ago. I remembered Julia making me sign for it. But inside, the page wasn't the same. Instead of the notice I recalled, it was a single sheet, newer, whiter, folded once across the middle. Typed in the same font as the note from my drawer. Permission can be given after the fact. No letterhead. No signature. Just that sentence. I checked another envelope, this time an old Christmas card from Emily. I knew it well. The photo of her kids in red sweaters. The card was still there, but the handwriting on the envelope was wrong. Slanted too far left. Sharper. Natalie's. Not Emily's. My breath caught. Had they switched them? Or had my memory slipped, filling in details that were never there? The radiator hissed in the hall. I wrote it down, this time on the back of a grocery flyer I found on the counter. Envelope swap. Typed sheet with phrase, permission can be given after the fact. Emily's card. But Natalie's handwriting on envelope. I tried to steady my hand, but the words slanted off the page. From the window I saw the gray sedan again, parked further down this time, near the hydrant, lights off, waiting. I pressed my forehead against the cold glass. My reflection wavered there, lined, pale, a stranger staring back. If Emily's envelope carried Natalie's hand, then either they were working together, or someone wanted me to believe it. And for the first time, I wondered if the house itself had become a stage, each drawer, each letter another prop in someone else's play. At the bottom of the shoebox lay a thin sheet of tracing paper, edges shiny with graphite, as if someone had been copying other people's letters. The back door was ajar when I came downstairs. Not wide, just enough for the night air to push a draft across the kitchen tiles. I stood there, hand on the frame. The lock wasn't broken, no sign of force. Maybe I left it half-latched. Maybe it was my own forgetfulness. Only the smell of damp grass carried in from the yard. I checked the drawers, nothing missing. But the binder I had locked in the kitchen cabinet sat on the counter. Open. Pages spread out like cards in a game. One sheet was turned sideways, as if someone wanted me to see it first. Typed, neat, no letterhead. By staying silent, you agree. The radiator ticked in the hall. Upstairs, the house creaked, as if someone was still moving. I wrote it down on the back of a utility bill. Door left open. Binder on counter. New typed sheet. By staying silent, you agree. My pencil snapped halfway through the word agree. Across the street, Mr. Alvarez carried groceries in with his daughter, plastic bags rustling, ordinary life, normal sounds. My world tilted again. I thought about Daniel, he had the spare key. Parker restless, always owing money. Emily and Natalie, one with the wrong envelope, the other with the letter I couldn't trust. But none of them wrote like this. It was legal phrasing. Someone used to contracts and clauses. I closed the binder, but I didn't lock it away this time. I left it on the counter, spine cracked, waiting. Because whoever had been here once would come again. And this time, I wanted to see them. It was back on the shelf. The notebook I thought I'd lost, the one ripped clean from the drawer. I froze in the doorway, watching the thin black cover sit between cookbooks like it had never left. But I knew it had. My hands shook when I pulled it down. The paper smelled faintly of smoke, like it had been near a candle or heater. I flipped through. Most looked the same. My cramped notes, lists of dates, phone numbers I didn't recognize. But in the middle, a page that hadn't been there before. Typed, not written. Cut to size, glued over a torn edge. I, Robert Hale, authorize transfer of property if I become unable to decide for myself. My name in bold. And below, a scrawled signature. Mine, but heavier. The downstrokes pressed too hard. I rubbed it with my thumb. The indentation was wrong. My own hand never dug that deep. The radiator hissed behind me. The silence stretched. I wrote it down. Notebook returned. New page glued in. Forged signature, too heavy. The pencil snapped in my grip. Across the street, Mrs. Alvarez's grandson tossed a ball, the hollow thud echoing on the curb. Ordinary. Simple. And I stood there holding a notebook that said I'd already signed my house away. Daniel's steady voice. You don't need to worry about the paperwork. Parker's quick laugh, always covering the cracks. Emily's neat handwriting, precise as the letter I still didn't trust. Natalie's careful reassurance. It's only precaution. I thought of the initials pressed months ago into Julia's binder. RK or DK. I turned the page, half hoping for them. Nothing. Just the forged clause, waiting like a trap. I closed the notebook, slid it back into the drawer, and this time I didn't lock it. If they wanted me to see it, I would let them think I had. But the smoke smell lingered, sour and wrong, clinging to my fingers. And I wondered, was the notebook ever really gone? Or had it always been moving, hand to hand, while I sat in the same chair, blind? I waited until morning before I opened the notebook again. The forged page was still there, heavy ink pressed too deep. Then, tucked behind the back cover, a small square slipped loose the sticky note I thought was gone. Same words, same hand. Check balances. In the corner, tiny, almost careless initials RK. I set the note beside Julia's binder and turned the binder under the lamp. The grooves I'd seen months ago in her archive lined up, the same RK pressed into the page, the same hand. It wasn't Daniel. It wasn't Parker. Not Natalie. Not Emily. It was Richard Keller, the realtor Julia once trusted, the one with all the right papers. Around noon, the gray sedan came back and idled by the hydrant. This time I wrote down the plate. I called the number scrawled on the flyer. A recording answered, Keller Realty. The extension matched the blue digits on my page. I opened the county property records site slow menus, clumsy clicks, and saw it, a pending transfer, sale in process, filed through Keller's firm. All the notes, the letters, the swaps, net family. Someone using family names to hide his own signature. I called the property records office. My voice was steady. I need to report a fraudulent filing. Name's Robert Hale. I have documents of forged signature, an altered notebook. Yes, I'll bring them in. At the post office, the station manager took my report and the plate number. He said the P.O. Box 3187 setup used Keller Realty's business registration number the same week my mail started to wander. The radiator ticked once. Sharp. Across the street, Mrs. Alvarez's grandson dropped his ball. It rolled into the gutter. He chased it, laughing. The whole world ahead of him. I looked down at the notebook in my hand. Julia's words on the first page. Do not sign under pressure. Keller's on the last. If you say nothing, it counts as a yes. At the property office, the clerk compared the wording on my insert with Keller's standard forms. Matches, she said, even the clipped little phrases. By evening, there was a fraud hold on the file. The transfer would not clear. I didn't shout. I didn't tell the family. I folded the forged page, slid it into a manila envelope, and left it on the clerk's desk at the courthouse. When Keller understood what I'd done, it was already too late. I locked the notebook away. This time not for them. For me. They had changed my words. I changed the ending. There was an envelope in the mailbox. No stamp, no return address. Just my name on the front. R. Hale printed in a hand I didn't recognize. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Blank. Smooth. No folds. No marks. I held it to the kitchen window, turning it toward the light. Nothing. But on the back, a faint score. A pressure mark. Like a nail had dragged across the surface and barely caught. I ran my thumb over it. Clean. Intentional. I set it beside the binder. Wrote it down. Envelope. No stamp. Blank page. Pressure line. Deliberate. No message. But not empty. Then I put the page back inside and slid the envelope into the drawer. This time with a note of my own. You think I'm reading? I'm writing. Outside, a lawnmower coughed to life. The neighbor waved across the fence. I nodded back. Ordinary morning. No calls, no visits. Just a sheet of paper. Still warm from someone's hand. But I knew what it meant. They were still playing. And I wasn't reading anymore. Thank you for watching Final Truth. Your support means the world to us. If this story kept you hooked until the end, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Every day we bring you new tales of family secrets, hidden motives, and twists you won't see coming. Turn on notifications so you never miss the moment the truth comes out. And remember, here at Final Truth, every ending is just the start of another story.